Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Gary's Casual Repo. Join me as I sit down with friends who are shaking up industries with their cool startups. We dive into their entrepreneurial journeys, innovative ideas, and the challenges they face. It's all about inspiration, insights, and the stories behind the startups making waves, where innovation meets friendship. Today, I have the honor of having two great co founders together on this podcast with their amazing AI. SanAI. Welcome, Heriberto and John.
Hey Gary, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you both very much for joining me today. I know it's very, very busy to be a founder, so really appreciate you taking the time to be here with me. And just tell me as well as the audience, what you're building, what your story is, and what your journey has been like. So to just get started, why don't both of you give us a little bit of a background on your journey so far? Like, where have you been before you guys partnered up? What inspired you guys to come together to create this company? John, you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. From the time that I was young, I knew that I wanted to go into science. It's always been my passion, and so I worked for 13 years in the pharmaceutical industry before this to pursue that passion. I've always wanted to make an impact where my intellect was able to have a positive impact on people's lives, and started with some of the larger companies in the industry that might be familiar names: Genentech, Thermo Fisher,
Yeah.
companies with tens of thousands of employees, but wanted to make that impact larger. And so then I went to move to San Francisco Bay from San Diego, my hometown, to try to get more into the startup scene, which is a bit more bustling here in the biotech world. And what I saw when I started moving into smaller companies was, how painful it was for these maturing companies to meet all
Mm,
the regulatory compliance and quality guidelines as they went through the pipeline. If you go to a place like Thermo Fisher or Genentech, they've had decades to perfect their approach, and they have tons of money, so there really is no existential threat to their
right.
survival. But that's not true for these people that are trying to make innovative new technologies. And I decided that instead of trying to choose one drug or therapeutic that would make that impact, perhaps shaking up the ecosystem and trying to make it generally more efficient so that more safe and effective drugs made it to market was better. I think overall I tend to be a bit of a structuralist, where I think that entities respond to their environments, and so the environment is the thing that we need to change.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Hey, Roberto, how about you?
Sure. So I've been a programmer for since I was young, since I was 10. Always really loved computers ever since my father gave me my first one. And I started as a software developer, and then moved to the Bay about 13 years ago because really that's where tech is just flourishing. Um, we started working at Zendesk for a little while, and was building out an enterprise engineering team. That's where I learned how to manage engineering teams,
Hmm.
which was a whole new realm for me. But in that, I started to learn more about compliance and started to learn how to stand up financial systems, learning how to build enterprise systems for a large enterprise organization, and then took that over to Reddit for 3 years, because they needed to IPO. And so I brought a lot of my compliance knowledge, built out an engineering team to help them build out their systems and their governance.
Oh,
And in
wow.
that time, I started, AI started to come out on the scene, got
Yeah.
really excited about that, and I just couldn't put it down. And then when John came to me with this idea around Sinai, not only we using AI to kind of help streamline regulatory compliance, but to help get drugs out faster, I got really excited and felt like I could be applying some of the enterprise software skills that I had to this project.
Absolutely. That sounds amazing. Um, Purely out of curiosity, what was that first computer that you received from your
Oh,
father. Do you
wow.
remember the model?
Yeah, it was a compact. Oh man, it was a compact. It only had DOS. Like this was before Windows, but I was starting to learn how to use. I don't know if you know QBasic, which is a
Yeah.
very rudimentary programming language. But as a 10-year-old, I was like figuring out how to use QBasic so I can scare my sister and create little crazy programs that she would type in. I mean, that was just that was like the impetus. I really I saw this machine that had all of this power, and I was like, wow, I can wield this power if I just put my mind to it.
Wow, that's awesome. I apologize if I accidentally exposed your age, but
It's
it's
fun.
but yeah, between the both of you, I feel like there's a really diverse set of skill sets, everywhere from technology to the industry expertise to dealing with finances, governance, everything. So sounds like a perfect match to me. Based on the problem space that you're dealing with, right? I think it's not an understatement to say that you guys are actually helping people to save lives, right? You're helping these companies to build out these life-saving drugs. So what's the mission and vision for SanAI?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that, to wake up in the morning and want to give it your all, you kind of have to have a good why statement, right? And I think that, in my family, I think it's very apparent the need for uh, healthcare to innovate, right? It's my little sister has late stage MS. There's no cure for that. I myself have a chronic disease that I deal with as well. That there's no cure for. Luckily, it is well treated at the moment, and have lost other people to uncurable conditions. And there are a finite number of human diseases that have accumulated over our evolutionary history to be solved. And if we try to hit this inflection curve to really accelerate that, we might see the vast majority or even all of them solved within our lifetime, depending on how fast we innovate. And I definitely wanted to be part of that. I mean, that's why I went into the industry originally. And then when I realized that you could just be a force multiplier on all companies
Yeah.
to get more of them out, that just seemed like the bigger impact, right? And so I really wanted to do that. So, and I know that everyone has a story like that, right? Everyone knows someone that has a disease that wasn't curable, and they didn't make it to the ripe old age, and we're trying to minimize that kind of tragedy, as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. That's thank you for sharing such a personal story. And I think often, especially in the fields of biotechnology, life science, healthcare, the founders are strongly motivated by these very personal reasons, and sometimes those are the most powerful things, right? That's what really wakes you up every day and you're ready to work. So thank you again for sharing that.
Of
So
course.
going a little bit into the industry, and shedding more light on the problems that you guys are tackling and the products that you're building, could you just give me a quick summary on the specific problems that you guys are helping these large pharma companies to address? Because I'm not super familiar with the industry, so would love to hear the problem space that you guys are working in.
Yeah, absolutely. I can start, and I think that Heriberto will have some good things to add here, as a software expert himself. But right now, the regulatory space has just been creating a giant burden on the pharmaceutical industry. I'm a firm believer that the regulation is necessary and important to keep drugs safe and effective. But the regulations are evolving faster than the pharmaceutical companies are able to keep up with them in a cost effective way, which has resulted over the last 50 years in the cost of drug development outpacing inflation by 250%. It's
Wow.
like the slopes are going like this. And so it's getting more and more expensive to bring new drugs to market, meaning that the incentive to throw money at new drugs and continue innovating is getting less and less with each passing generation until this problem is solved, right? And with numbers like that of $2.3 billion per drug over 10.8 years on average as of 2023, you start to realize that the reason why human health isn't solved is not like a lack of good ideas. It's a lack of money to pursue all of the good ideas that are waiting in the queue to get through. And so what we're essentially trying to do is just make it easier to comply with all these regulations because essentially they're not complicated. They just are work, right? And so
Right.
being able to automate all the paperwork around all these filings, knowing what your regulatory burden is, getting the right materials in the supply chain in order to comply, all of that can be done much faster and ultimately get these drugs out faster, de-risk the space for investors even more. So we see more pharmaceutical startups and less random dating app and rideshare. It's we're trying to focus like the economic machine on the important things that have, tangible impacts to human lives in a way that's more just luxury or convenience.
No,
And
totally. I mean, those are some really mind-boggling numbers that you just talked about just now. And I think that's probably one of the biggest barriers, right, for new players in this field. I feel like all the times I hear about these big names like Pfizer or Eli Lilly, and these are just behemoth in the industries, but very seldom do I hear about new pharma startup. And I believe that this is part of the problem.
yeah, absolutely. And like to tag onto that problem, the reason I was tagging Heriberto is the current softwares, I guess that we'd be competing against to talk about these, are not really keeping up with all the best, B2B SaaS practices. And, as he's been researching it, I don't know. Do you want
Yeah,
to
I'm
get
happy to
into
tag into
here?
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of research on the software market within pharma and have realized that it really hasn't changed in almost 15 years. A lot of them are built on old tech stacks or older software platforms, and they're not implementing the latest versions of search. Where we're going to be providing a semantic search. Not only are we going to be making it so that you can understand the life cycle of your documents and understand how who approved them for regulation, but what if you could actually understand your process, and what if you could actually understand the content of that data? None of the platforms are currently doing that today. Also, a lot of these systems just take very long times to implement. So I think that another area that we're focusing on is ease of use and making it kind of like a web 2.0, even further on, use of business applications where we can say you can self-serve, you can purchase our application and start implementing your system as soon as you receive it, because we've made it easy for you to turn on without having to have
Mm.
professional services set you up. And then, also to what John was saying is that, none of these systems are implementing AI today. And with the recent advancements in AI generation, where we could be helping them generate these documents and 80% faster than just writing them down in a Word doc, that's going to move them forward so much faster than they have ever thought of. So, yeah, those are just a couple of areas that we've kind of scoped out so far.
That's
Yeah.
really interesting. Sorry, go ahead, John.
No, no, no. Yeah, I agree. I just wanted to tack on a final thing there, which is, this idea that the current companies are really sort of doing the bare minimum that they could do to meet these legal requirements that the FDA places upon the pharmaceutical clients that they have. But no one is trying to take risks here, right? Because they've created reputations on not making mistakes
Yeah.
essentially. So their incentive to be a disruptor or risk taker is fairly low. And so I think that that's where we want to come in and say, hey, no, you can trust computers. It's not just telling people work harder, do better.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
there are structural technological solutions that can unlock the potential of everyone in your workforce.
Totally. I'm so glad you touched on that point because I think the thing that also I think drives lower innovation in this particular industry and sector compared to how technology has been disrupting the rest of the sector is precisely because the incentive model is kind of skewed, right? It's about not making mistake rather than improving things and taking risks, and there's innately this nature of playing it safe, playing it conservative. So, and
100%.
another thing that I think is really interesting, something that John you mentioned, is that how much regulation is actually changing compared to the companies can follow. Whereas, both of you will know AI has been changing at a pace that's super stunning, and there are a lot of talks in the regulatory world of how the regulation can catch up to AI. So they're almost like, the mirror opposite of each other. So what's like, I think, for both a product perspective as well as a technology perspective to kind of be in this intersection, this crossfire of two pretty different way how regulation is affecting things.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to touch on there, right? And I think the first one is the idea of being able to make completely informed decisions, right? I think what AI really allows us to do is access all the information we need at every point instantaneously to make those. And there's a saying in the industry that, you know, great quality professionals are risk tolerant, bad quality professionals are risk averse. the
Yeah.
the reason for that is when you don't know the answer, there's an innate fear of the unknown, right? And you can't always justify it, but the burden of proof obviously is on proving something is safe. And so if you can't prove that it's safe, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not safe, it just means that you couldn't prove it. um, in science we would say that you're trying to eliminate false positives,
Mm.
but in this case you're not getting the full range of positive results that are out there. And so we believe that by being able to access all the relevant information, not just within your own data suite, but really all the relevant information that's on the internet and saved in these models, not just, a model from OpenAI, but other models like Galactica, which have been trained on every scientific white paper ever published.
Oh,
You know, as a
that's a new one
result,
for me.
yeah, where suddenly you're able to be able to justify or, you know, not justify, your decisions, but you'll get more conclusive answers. And I think that instead of operating based on fear, it opens people to operate based on truth more. And so we're hoping that AI will help regulation become more risk tolerant by knowing
Mm,
what the actual effects are instead of having to err so far on the side of caution because they just don't know.
right.
Right. And I think that that's what you should do in the absence of information, but that absence of information is absolutely ending.
Yeah, a symbiotic relationship. That's the one thing I remembered from my grade 10 biology class. Symbiotic.
Yeah.
But that's definitely a really interesting way to think about the relationship between, such new technology and regulation. And this is a perfect segue, I think, into the more technology and innovation side for the company. And maybe Heriberto, you can shed more light into, what are the AI technologies or methodologies you guys are using to develop and employ to solve such a important problem.
Yeah, of course. So we're using a lot of generative AI tooling, and some of this is going to be a big data science problem. But I think one of the main things is just a lot of these organizations already have a corpus of documents. They just don't have the ability to access them, as John was saying. So if you can give them the ability to access this data using tools that have recently come on the market, or not market, but in the arena, which is like vector databases, and actually creating embeddings of all this documentation, giving that data to the fingertips of these scientists. I'm about to be doing this chromatography step, but I don't know the SOP I'm supposed to have. A lot of the people that I've talked to say that they keep a bunch of Word documents open on their computer because they don't know how to find some of these documents. But one of the tools we're going to be implementing is a semantic search. So actually being able to search your corpus of documents through semantics and say, I'm about to do this chromatography step. What do I need to know?
Mm,
And not only will bring up the standard operating procedure for them, but it will bring up some of the last couple of runs that they've had, maybe any deviations in the sense that, maybe something didn't go right in the last run, so that they can have all of this information at their fingertips and ready for them to before they go do their step, which I think pushes that, we're trying to make it so that they are in regulation because they have the information available to them. Really, that searching tool. Um, and then, we're going to be creating a document authoring tool, where we start to use generative AI so that we can be building out new documents for this process using not only best practices that we've trained our model on, but also documents within their corpus, as well as templates so that it matches exactly what their company has already been building. We're not going to be extremely prescriptive here outside of the best practices. But, if you already have a template for how you want your document built, we'll be able to provide that for you using AI, generative AI, and a very unique, bespoke document generation tool that I really haven't seen anybody provide yet. And then the next piece is going to be creating a suite of AI agents using some of the
Mm.
models that John had mentioned. How do we have AI agents look over all of this information across the application to ensure that they're staying in regulatory compliance, almost as like their quality management department would find, but they would have to be looking for a needle in a haystack. Now you have a team of AI agents that are looking over all of your data and saying, hey, we found something. You should really address this. Or going back to best practices, what if we could give you insights on how you could be making your process more streamlined, more effective, or even safer? So those are the three areas that I think we're going to be focusing on in this next year. And then there's plenty more to come, but I think those are the three that are the most interesting. Um, yeah. And, just to double tap on the regulation piece, I think regulation with AI is a very it's a really big challenge, and I think one of the other areas that we're doing from a technical perspective is that we're ensuring that we have very strong data integrity and data governance.
Mm.
So, like a lot of other startups who are building out, a dating app, they don't have to think about these things outside of, just emails and credit cards.
Right,
We're
right.
actually taking that extra step to ensure that we have good data governance.
Yeah, I mean, working at Meta, I definitely share that same similar emphasis and focus on privacy and protection of data. And I know, especially when it comes to personal health data, there are a lot of restrictions on what information can be shared, etc. And actually, that's something that I want to follow up on because you mentioned that these companies, right? It's not that they don't have the corpus or the data or the documents to provide enough training data to build such a model. It's just that the technology has not been applied in this problem. So how do you convince these companies, right, to trust you guys and use your product and give you guys access to their information and the data they have? Like, what kind of measures do you have in place to make sure that there won't be potential leaks, or whatever the models are being trained on, it wouldn't be exposed to the public? Yeah.
So yeah, I think from a technical perspective, we are, following a lot of security practices early on in our development here. I've worked for SOC 2 companies, as well as had to follow Sarbanes-Oxley. So really
Mm.
focusing on putting all those security practices in place so that we can meet those certifications, and really we're gonna be dogfooding our own system here soon, where we're going to be putting all of our practices into place, making sure that we have all the right controls on not only the code, but where the data is, how the data is proliferated, and our software development lifecycle, and so on, and using our tool to make sure that we're focusing on our own regulatory practices. We also have really strict testing and validation. So we have a small team of people that are looking over the entire AI model, as well as the things that we're producing from the software side, to test what the validity of what we're building. And we have a corpus of documents that we've kind of created internally. Let's call it our own personal pharmaceutical manufacturing corpus of documents so that we can test against. And that has been really interesting to see not only the results that we're getting from our AI model, but then also how we can be improving the product because we're doing our own internal testing.
Yeah, I mean, I've witnessed, our product already perform tasks that would have taken me days to do in seconds. It's really impressive and humbling, to see what computers are able to do, over people these days, especially, people that have been in the industry with a lot of experience like myself. And I think just to tack on, how we're going to convince people to adopt this, right? It's not just, the security practices. That's not really even the biggest concern for them. It's really the data integrity and ability, um, for the audit logs to exist for investigations. And that kind of comes down to the core of what we're providing here in the early days, right? As we start to launch this product, is this ability to make investigations of all types very easy. Because you can almost think of every single task that you do in the industry as some sort of microcosm of an investigation, whether you're
Hmm.
verifying data against two documents, a primary data source and a transcribed
Interesting.
one,
Yep.
or whether there's an adverse event and you have to find a root cause, or you need to revise an SOP because there's a repeated human error on a step and figure out what the best course of action to change in that procedure is. All of this kind of is in that same idea space of investigations, and what investigations need is information that is
Right.
fully available and succinctly put to the point. And so if you train your model to know what all the objectives are and it has access to all the information, then every micro task along the way that falls into that purview is going to happen in order of magnitude faster.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So something that you've mentioned before, right, is that some of these companies they already have existing solutions which are very outdated, and it's very clear to me how your product is gonna just excel in every way compared to the existing competitors by just as Heriberto mentioned, having a better search. That's a really useful thing to have that I think people get for granted, and only when they see how bad it could be that they care about that. Or, all the AI innovations that you guys have mentioned before. But something that was also mentioned, right, is that there is a lot of overhead to go on board onto another system. So does that change, the kind of customers that you guys are going after right now? Like, are you guys going after smaller or mid-sized pharma companies, or are you guys, going straight to the leaders?
So, yeah, I think that that's a great question. And, the answer might not be quite as straightforward as you would think. So, overall, in the short term, we are focusing on trying to grow alongside companies that are a little bit smaller. I think part of it is, a personal motivation of wanting to help, these startups that are similar sizes to the ones that I worked in because I have a personal connection to their struggle. But also, it'll be nice to grow alongside them as they mature, as our product does, and help them become the winners in this next generation. But that's certainly not the full extent of it, right? Because we're not only selling to pharma companies, we're also selling to CDMOs,
Hmm.
CROs, consulting agencies, lab equipment suppliers, anyone that's in that ecosystem of
Right.
trying to build
Right.
out a new process, or the clinical trial is, ultimately what we're targeting here. However, there's a lot of room in big pharma too, because big pharma, once they actually get big enough, have their own startups within their organization,
Right.
right? And they oftentimes don't have one unified data solution across the entire organization. A lot of times it comes down to sites or projects. Like, it was funny, I used to work for Thermo Fisher, like I brought up at the beginning of this interview. And a few years ago, when I was looking for a job between two of my positions, someone told me about a new startup lab that was happening in San Francisco that really needed a process engineer, and I got excited about it, and then found out it was Thermo Fisher starting it. They were
Oh,
just they were
full
starting their own
circle.
Yeah, it's like they were just starting a new site, but they made it sound like a startup because by all intents and purposes it was, aside from the fact that they had, very large pockets supporting them, so they didn't have to really worry about runway in the same way. But at the end of the day, they were dealing with all the same products or problems of having to start something from scratch and build from the ground up. And so I think that there's probably a lot of
Mm.
examples like that, right? Where you could get a small new program within a large pharma company to try you out. So we're not trying to limit what our serviceable addressable market is here. We're
Gotcha.
keeping
Yeah.
it open to whoever thinks that we're the right solution for them.
I'd also like to tack on one thing from a product perspective. So as we're designing the product, we are designing it with flexibility. And going back to what I was saying about that self-service implementation, we're already building out a feature where we're going to be able to take this corpus of documents that an organization would have and use our AI model as well as other programmatical features to determine what are the documents they are, what what was their naming schema, and reduce the amount of time that a company would need to implement our system. It's not done today, but it is something that we are working on already, because we know that a lot of these organizations are going to be coming in with hundreds, if not thousands, of documents. So how can we be utilizing the tools that we're building to look at all those documents, understand them, and get them implemented into the system faster? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's something that I want to follow up as well. Because as John has mentioned, that you guys are going after not just the pharmaceutical companies, but it's every player, every companies that's in this ecosystem, right? And I'd imagine that there are different types of files, and maybe they're in different formats. How does your product like handle that? How much of a problem is that to have like vast variety of documents that would have to be handled and categorized perhaps?
Document type is a pretty, like the actual file type is a solved problem, right? Like being able to do PDF parsing or doc parsing, that's not too complicated. Now, the different types of documents,
Right, right, right.
there are a set, there is a set type, a set number of types that a pharma company would be using. We understand most of those. We are going to be giving our customers the ability to upload their own, or we will be prescriptive and say, hey, here's best practice. You can use these. But once we have those uploaded into the system, then that's what will give the model the ability to start to detect, well, this is a match here, this is a match here. Not only that, but we're going to be using, every pharma company has somewhat of a numbering schema with all of their documents, the type of document, the department, as well as where it falls into the sequence. So we're able to leverage that as well to be able to determine what types of documents this is, as well as who is it for.
Mm,
And that's some of the testing that we're already doing today, because we do have, we've created this document type uploader where we're able to upload all of these different document types. We're uploading hundreds of documents today for our testing, and
wow,
we're
okay.
already seeing that we're able to do matches. So we just need to, hone that in a little bit more so that we can
Right.
productize it.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept of spatial color, but it's sort of the idea that the rainbow really is just a gradient, and the way that we chop it up is kind of a product of our language.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
you can think of, the way that regulations impact a pharma company is the actual prism. And then the way that they name the colors is the different document types, and different ones might chop it up into 25 different
Ah,
pieces. Others might chop it up into five. It's like the way that they categorize it is up to them. But we have the ability, because the models are trained on the regulations, to tie, no matter how they're doing these, back to the regulatory origins that they're coming from, which is ultimately the fact that they're trying to fulfill some requirement in the FDA federal regulations, right? And so if we're able to tie it back to that, then those relationships are still known, understood, and we'll be able to map those out and show when the AI is working, how all these documents
yeah.
function in tandem with each other.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation and analogy. That was really great painting this picture in my head to really visualize how do your products handle these different documents. It sounds like it's much easier for the AI model to handle than for my brain to handle. So um
Yeah.
one more question I have in terms of sort of building relationships with customer, right, is um biotechnology companies and dealing with drugs, right? This is a sensitive industry, as y'all have mentioned, that are there are expectation from the public that whatever information is being published and evaluated are as reliable as possible. And there have been cases, right, regarding COVID and how that got started. There's been talks about the how efficient the vaccine is. There's also cases in other industries such as law where AI was utilized, and I don't know if y'all have heard about this story, but some New York attorney, I think, or lawyer used
Yeah,
AI to write their cases, and the AI was hallucinated, and they got their, I'm pretty sure, their bar license taken
yeah,
away.
yeah, yeah, they got disbarred from
Right,
those, yeah.
exactly. So how do you approach your customers, and how confident you are in your system in being like reliable and generate the accurate information?
Yeah, luckily we have a very easy answer to that, and it was the first thing that I thought of when I was trying to start this company, is that we need to solve for hallucination because human lives are on the line, and
Right.
this is not gonna fly without those wings, and so the first thing that we built was the citation engine, and, I guess it didn't get, discussed earlier in this just based on the nature of the questions that have been being asked. But yeah, every answer comes with citations directly, from the document corpus. And then soon will be it, when we start accessing documents from the internet as well, citing those uh, at the same time. And in addition to that, we'll be implementing a confidence score with each one, showing the percent match
Wow.
of that citation. So at the end of the day, humans are still able to make those decisions just like they already have been. They're just getting the information they need to make those decisions more readily available to them.
Gotcha.
So, it's what they still would have seen after 3 hours of research, they're just getting
Right.
it in seconds, and if they wanna do a double click and look into that citation further, then they can, it's right there for them, and
Yeah.
so we're actually not telling people to trust that the answer is correct, we're actively encouraging
Mm.
to verify it, but we're just making it extremely easy for them to verify it so that they can be confident that this is true.
Wow. So basically going from libraries to Google, right? The
Yep.
humans still have to make that final judgment call, but it's much easier to see the data that's out there rather than searching in the library for hours.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Um, on that topic of citation, though, just out of curiosity, from a technology perspective, is that built using RAG, or is there some other
It's a little bit
methodologies
of
being
both.
used?
So we are using a RAG system to search the documents out of the vector database. And we've got a couple of different methods for that. But then to actually get down to the citation level, we're doing a couple of different things, whether it's the citation, or I'm sorry, the nodes that we're getting back from the RAG system, but also doing a fuzzy search as well to really
Mm,
verify that we're getting a true citation, because that's one thing that AI can hallucinate on a little bit is, oh, I think this is a citation, but how do we verify? And we've got a couple of methods for that. Fuzzy searching is one of them. I think the others are a little bit more, a little more, let's call secretive.
yeah, definitely. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that, something that, I just want to make clear here is that we're not just citing it in the way that a Wikipedia article would with like one click on this article, but we're actually directly pulling the text out that
Mm,
is the match for the citation. So they can look at the original source documentation in its entirety, but also see where exactly in that document it was, so they don't just have to read that whole document to verify it, right? It's like,
yeah.
where was this? Oh, this page, this line right here. This is where the confirmation is. And so I think that, that's going to make things a lot easier for people trying to verify these things.
I wish such system existed back when I was a student. It really made my life so much easier writing essays, etc. So you guys have shared really amazing details and your journey and the amazing things that your company has been building, right? But I also want to get to know both of you as co-founders. So kind of going into you two's relationship as co-founders, could you share with us kind of like what your working styles are, how that may complement each other, etc.?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah,
Working styles.
yeah,
Um,
I think I can start,
Go ahead.
and then you jump in. So, Heriberto and I have known each other for over 5 years now, as friends. We weren't super close, but we always had a good relationship, and we worked together on some large scale technical art projects
Mm.
over the years that kind of showed that we, had the same, I guess, working style, and it was a very low friction. And so then when, I just saw him at a concert, and, you know, we just ran into each other, and when he asked what I was doing, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I'm starting my own company doing this," and he just, told me he was interested, and, the
Wow.
more we got to talking and kind of, interrogating each other on our working styles, it seemed like we were very similar just in terms of how we viewed leadership, how we viewed, developing teams, conflict resolution, prioritization, all these like things, where the devil's in the details. And so far the thesis has been right. I'm incredibly lucky to have him as a co-founder. It's been very low tension and high reward. And yeah, I definitely back the right horse on this one.
Kudos to that.
I think for me, man, working style. I mean, everything that John just said, right? But I guess when I think of working style, I think of maybe like leadership style and kind of what is the type of teams that I want to be building. And I think one of the things that I try to focus on is something that I learned from Zendesk actually is building a team of humbledent
Mm.
people. And I know it's a weird word, but it's humble yet confident, right?
Oh.
Building a Yeah, building a team where you can ensure that people are coming to the table, humble to hear ideas, to have discussion, to have discourse, but confident enough to share those ideas. And I think some of the things that I really am trying to focus on with the team is putting in good decision frameworks and making sure that we are having that discourse because as you're building out a large application, there's going to be a lot of really great ideas, but some of them are going to land and some of them are not. And it's important that everyone gets heard. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I agree with that, and trying to implement that on my side of the organization too. And I've always had, to tack onto that, a passion for, you know, developing, my reports maybe even more than is like advisable from a business perspective. But, I think that empowerment as part of that humbledent
Yeah.
equation is huge. And once you give someone confidence and make them believe in themselves, it's, actually really moving to see their performance skyrocket. When people are nervous or in a state of fear, they tend to tense up. They don't trust their gut. And, we have really powerful intuitions and instincts, that have
Yeah.
been embedded to us over millions of years. And when you learn to trust that with confidence, a lot of really great things happen. And I've seen that happen repeatedly throughout my career, and trying to repeat that magic here with SanAI.
Yeah, awesome. Competence should definitely be the word of 2025. Merriam-Webster should definitely add it into the dictionary, make it an official word. And so I really awesome to see that you two have such great synergy working with each other. And I know for tonight, you guys have some exciting news to share regarding the recent funding round you guys had.
Yeah, I would say that, the good news has started, but it's definitely not over. At this point, we've raised over 200K, which has, enabled our go to market strategy as we're getting this pilot program rolling, and, going to make our uh, debut with our document management feature at BPI East. in this September. So we're very much looking forward to that. Going as an exhibitor rather than an attendee, like I did in years past with
Yeah.
previous companies, is going to be a great thing. And yeah, we are still raising and still have um, many investors on the line that are going into our inbox on a regular basis. We're well within the thesis of a lot of firms or individual angel investors, because the truth is the problem statement we were talking about earlier
Yeah.
is well known, and people are starting to really get desperate for a solution to clinical development because it's so painful and so expensive that without a major seismic disruption, it's just going to get worse and worse. And on something as important as human health, I don't think that anyone wants to see that outcome. And so
Right.
people making big moves.
That's not. Yeah, it's, I mean, it's a bleak future given the current trend that you've already mentioned. And as it's my favorite, my idol Kobe has said, the job's not done. But definitely a huge congratulations to you two both and the whole team SNI of achieving this amazing milestone. So what's next? What can we expect from you guys, until the end of this year into 2025?
Well, I can go. I think what you can expect, at least from a roadmap perspective, is that we're actually going to be releasing our document management feature, which is the full document management feature, which will allow organizations to manage their documents and start to follow that regulatory compliance here right before our BPI East conference. So really excited to be showing that to attendees there. And then we're going to be focusing on the document authoring tool, which is going to land by the end of the year, where we're going to be able to start having our customers building out these new documents and starting to flesh out and streamline their process a lot more faster than they have before. I think outside of that, I think that some things that you can be looking for is that we're going to be doing a little bit more. We're going to be doing some work in our social media, and we're going to be posting out some really interesting articles there. John, do you have anything that you can think of that you
Yeah, I
look
mean,
out for?
absolutely. Like, first, just to echo, I think that it's hard to overstate what an impact this document authoring feature is going to have when we release that. I mean, it takes a lot of time to make really any document, but especially when we start tackling things like regulatory filings that are extremely complex and take large teams months to complete. Being able to get a first draft out within days using this tool
Yeah.
is going to be huge. Being able to summarize vast tranches of clinical data that you would have to pay medical writers $100,000 like on a contract to summarize, doing that in seconds, that's going to be enormous. Being able to in early 2025, when we do our review and systems auditing a module to come out, being able to audit an entire company's documentation suite looking for compliance risks before an FDA auditor finds it, is going to give them peace of mind and hopefully save them a lot of money in the event that they would get some kind of adverse observation that would threaten their right to operate, which we know is something that would have um, implications in the millions of dollars, right? And so there's a lot of things to be excited about. And in the very long term horizon, our goal is to try to create, our own quality and regulatory intelligence model, maybe in a few funding rounds from now, that is really an expert in this idea of risk management and risk tolerance. Because when you're thinking of a risk and trying to like weigh the pros versus the cons, it's very complicated. It's like you're looking at the business and financial decisions versus human safety versus legal implications versus social implications, and seeing them all in this like complex like 4D matrix that we are talking to actually some of the top researchers in the AI field with things that are not commercially
Mm.
available about setting up the frameworks that would allow that in the future, and applying for some government grants to pursue that side of the R&D as well, so that we can be creating this first for pharma, but so many decisions have to take really intense diligence on
Right.
the management side, that if we prove this can work for pharma, making great risk management and risk tolerance models from everything from politics, environmental impacts, like this
Yeah.
could really change the way that society functions. If we're able to prove it for something like biology, we can probably prove it for almost anything.
That's a really exciting vision, and I'm so glad that you two are the ones building it out. So we're coming to near the end of the podcast of the episode, and there's one question that I ask all of my guests and friends when they come on this show. Would each of you please share one advice for people who are looking to become founder, or join as co-founders?
Ooh. I think one thing that comes to mind for me is, especially having done this twice now, is be very choosy about who you co-found with,
Hmm.
right? I think that you are going to be married to this person for 10 years. So I think it's really that for me is probably one of the biggest thing is really find that good co-founder fit. It's beyond the idea, like really finding that other partner, because ideas can change, pivots can happen, but that one person's not really going to change, or at least it shouldn't. So that's mine.
Totally. I mean, I know just from stats wise, right? Most of the, or at least a really big factor of startups failing is co-founders breaking up. So that's really a crucial thing to look out for. John, what about you?
Yeah, my advice would just be humble yourself immediately and try to get advice from as many people as possible to mentor you, right? Because when you're trying to do something new that's scary and you've been put into such a narrow box, over the years into whatever kind of cog role that you've been in a large company previous to this, there's no way that you can know every possible thing that you're going to have to know as a founder, because now you have to know things about legal,
Yeah.
finance, sales, marketing, or if those are the things that you're strong in, tech, and the customer base. It's a really wide breadth of things that you have to learn very quickly to talk intelligently about it. And I think one of the mistakes that I made that I would do differently the second time around was, I was like, I'm going to try to do this myself and then see when I run into a roadblock and ask for help. Which, when in reality, what I should have done on day one when I decided was just make a blast and talk to everyone I knew that could help me and
Hmm.
say, hey, I'm here wanting to learn and I'm making a change. Who's in this with me? Because
Yeah.
when I actually did that, the outpouring was, incredible and unexpected and really supercharged the company. And it took me a few months to get to that point, and I wish I had done it on day one, because we'd be, you know, 3, 4 months ahead of where we are right now,
Right.
if I had done that earlier, and probably would have found Heriberto earlier too if I had been more transparent about what I was doing. So don't stay in stealth mode within your network. Engage them immediately. That's my number one advice.
Wow. That's a really great advice. I mean, I know how important like mentorship and community is in the startup world, right? Like that's why we have all these incubators and this networks. So thank you both for these amazing advice. And finally, you know, SanAI sounds like a great place to build a product to help save lives. And for our audience who are interested, where can they go to learn more about it?
Well, you can go to, well, one, you can go to our website, sanai.ai. You can also go to our Twitter account, which is Sanai, so SANAI underscore AI. And those are the two, I would say those are the two main places that you could go today. You can book a demo on our website, or if you have some really interesting ideas for us, yeah, leave them on our Twitter.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd love to connect with anyone, whether you just want to learn more, as a potential customer, advisor, investor, whoever you may be. We're just trying to look to expand our network and, see who's interested in this and what those alignments are. And almost everyone that we've talked to, we have learned something valuable from, regardless of the outcomes of those conversations. So, Hit us up. We're waiting.
Amazing. I will link to both of those channels in the show notes as well. But that's it for today. Thank you so much, Heriberto and John, for joining me today and coming onto the podcast and share with us just this amazing mission that you've taken on, this amazing company that you guys are building. I know the journey is still early. There's still a lot more to done, but I'm super excited for you guys and to just follow your guys' journey and see where you guys are headed next.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you so much. This has been truly a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll meet again soon.
Best of luck and see everyone for the next episode.
All right. Goodbye.
Bye.